It's Monday, February 17th, 2020. Digital Trends Live is about to start. Here are some of the topics we're covering on today's episode of the show. The World Health Organization convened with a number of leading big tech companies yesterday in an effort to try to stem the tide of misinformation surrounding the coronavirus. We'll give you the details. And there's a new documentary from Frontline debuting tomorrow called Amazon Empire, The Rise and Reign of Jeff Bezos. To talk about this project, we'll be joined by director James Jacoby. We'll also have our own Davin Matthews on the show to cover the latest release from Nikon, the D780, which is their upgrade over the D750. He'll let us know which features work and which don't. And in studio, we also have Ethan Ralston, the U.S. President and CEO of UPCO, to discuss the official launch of pre-orders for the FRX-1, an outdoor electric bike that is extremely lightweight and sits in a new segment between mountain bikes and motocross bikes. All of this and more on today's episode of Digital Trends Live. Well, hello, everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. Thanks for joining us wherever you are. We appreciate it. Of course, we broadcast live here every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you trending tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and so much more. All we're broadcasting live across a number of different platforms. We're on Periscope, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Dailymotion, Apple News, 2 different mobile apps, a smart television app, and digitaltrends.com/live. So whatever platform you're on, thanks for joining us. You can also join in the conversations we get to have, but hit that subscribe button, share the show, let other people know about it, and we appreciate that. So let's get it started here right now. I'm Greg Nibbler with Mr. Luke Larson. Hello, Luke.
Good morning, Greg.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us here today.
Yeah, Monday. It's
Monday.
A good day to be alive.
It is. I want that to be your intro every single time, no matter what the day is.
Only on Mondays.
Only on Mondays, though. It is Monday, and we'll talk about President's Day, which is also here today. So I'm wondering if some of you may be at home right now watching this show. So thanks for joining us. But let's get started talking about some trending tech news and information. And this one is one we cannot get away from. It's talking about the coronavirus and some of the efforts right now to stop the spread of misinformation surrounding it. Surprise, the internet is full of misinformation. Big shocker right there. But what has happened is WHO, which is the World Health Organization, has yesterday convened a number of different major tech firms to try to talk about how they can stem the tide of this misinformation from spreading around online. So they actually met at Facebook's campus. They had Facebook, Amazon, Google were all there, Airbnb, Dropbox, Kinza, Mapbox, Salesforce, Twitter, Verizon, YouTube, a number of different firms all there to talk about this. Of note, Apple, Lyft, and Uber were invited but did not send representatives to this. So the whole goal was, though, to talk to these companies about how they change and how you stem all of this false info that is out there. And that goes from everything from just, people online claiming they're experts, which, again, we've all seen some of those videos, like some dude in his truck in the parking lot of a Denny's, like, let me tell you, man, it's all conspiracy. Yeah, that kind of stuff that gets shared a million times. To also just the fact that hackers and scammers are using the term coronavirus to try to fish information out of people. So there's all kinds of stuff that's going on with this. And really, the importance of actual factual information being distributed is a big deal. You need that out there, and this is trying to, I guess, rally the troops to figure out how these tech companies can do this.
So you're telling me it's not related to the beer?
It is. See, exactly. There it is.
See, because I read something.
I don't know, man. I don't see a Tecate, but yeah, that's exactly stuff like that. Yeah. People spreading this about that Corona beer had something to do with it. I mean, and the thing is, it's frustrating when you see things like that get spread around, and you're like, we probably all know somebody on social media who maybe it's a relative or maybe it's a friend of a relative who is spreading something
likes to share this stuff.
Likes to share this stuff. Obama's a lizard person, that kind of thing. But when you get down to it, I mean, that stuff is really dangerous once that gets propagated and people just don't stop and look at it. So assuming that people can't control themselves from sharing such false information as that, how do you actually tackle it from the other side of things?
Yeah. Normally I'm a little skeptical of big tech trying to figure things out like this, but I think I like that it's the World Health Organization that came up with this idea to bring everybody together, and they obviously know what they're doing.
They do.
Because I don't trust that Twitter's gonna figure out how to decide what's misinformation and what's not. That's never going to really go well. But because there's an organization at the center of this, inviting everybody in, I think this is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and we don't really know what came out from it, how they're going to be able to work together, or what kinds of ways they can do it. But at least getting them all in the same room, essentially, and talking, that's a good start.
Yeah.
And if the thing is, the way I'm looking at it too, is if they can actually tackle this, this is important. You can't have false information out there, and there's people that propagate that stuff, or it's just it's not right. Not when it comes down to something like this. But if they are able to harness the power of everybody and figure this out, then what do you do? I mean, how much control do we give big tech? Like you said, that can be a little bit unnerving that they have all that. But can they do some more good in stopping the spread, of false information on other aspects? Because there's a lot of things that are of concern out there.
Yeah, if they just throw down some baseline things, like, okay, let's throw out just everything that is related to this one keyword that puts these two things, I don't know what they'll do, but anything they can do to kind of throw out any of that baseline stuff would be great.
Yeah. So we'll have to see, where it goes from there. But that is at least, I think, a good development so far. Again, we'll find out more of what's going to come of it, or if anything is at all. But as of right now, too, you can always go to digitaltrends.com. We've got a lot of information on this, and of course the coronavirus. And there's a ton of things that are going on with that. But that's what we're going to talk about when it comes to that side of things. But continue on here with our next topic. Let's talk about the continued fallout from MWC not happening. And, obviously MWC canceled, but talking about that from the manufacturer and the tech side of things, there's a lot of phone companies that were going to be debuting their new products or some of their prototypes at this event, and now we have to figure out how those are going to be debuted. But there are some images that now have leaked from TCL showcasing one of their new concept phones, and it's kind of a take, not really on foldable tech, but that whole idea of expanding your phone. And I actually really like this one. So there's some images that came out related to this, and it is a phone that actually has a slide-out screen that connects to give you double the space. So it turns it into a mini tablet. So this would be one where essentially there's almost a case of a screen over the top of it that kind of rounds around the corner, and then from within that, boom, you pull out another one. That's what I added in the boom. That wasn't in their part, but that's how I'm imagining it sounds. But no, then it opens up and then connects to where you have this double wide screen.
Yeah, I'm really curious about this because it looks cool on the screen, but then I'm imagining when you pull it out, like, is there going to be like a ridge there, or like because it has to go inside of it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I'm sure they have a way of kind of getting over that. But yeah, it's a cool idea. And there's, obviously foldable phones are just like everywhere right now. And
right.
In the past week, we had the Galaxy Z Flip and the Razer phone. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. Those ones are having some problems. So
they are,
with some reliability issues.
Yeah, and we have some articles up about that too, just about the Z Flip and some of the issues.
Yeah,
and the Motorola Razr.
Yeah, so I don't know if this technology has really arrived in the way that it needs to, but I'm sure as people try out new options like this or more iterations on it, hopefully they figure these things out so they last more than 24 hours. But
right. Yeah, and I think that's one of those things too, and this is something that I always like to know from people, what you're interested in. Is this just another case of the phone manufacturer being like, we can do it, so we're just going to keep on doing it until you want to buy it? Or is this something that people are really, really wanting? I mean, I like the idea. I think the clamshell style is the closest I've seen to something that I'm like, okay, I kind of like that idea.
Yeah.
But this is just cool.
Yeah.
Like I like, and LG's shown some patents like this before too. They're not the only ones. TCL is not the only one, but TCL is also known for making products that are below what Samsung charges, but still quality. So if this is something that they can actually put out and get it at a price at around, say half of what some of these foldable devices are, that could be a game changer. That could be something that could actually, I could see selling.
Right, because this is just because it's TCL, it's not going to be a whatever $2,000 phone or something.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that would at least get the technology out there and get people using it. Because I think the biggest issue with this stuff is, with all kind of experimental form factors, there's once you have to use it, or else you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
What are you missing with it? Well, most people's first question is like, why would I want that? Like,
Yeah.
What does that
What
even
does it do?
Yeah. But then, once you get your hands on it, you start to imagine like, oh, this actually would be kind of cool for whatever scenario. So.
Right, but at $1,500 as the barrier to entry, and some of these not being top-notch, phones internally anyway. Yeah.
And externally.
And
if they're
externally,
breaking.
yeah. And with the screens breaking, yeah. That's a big issue. So we'll have to see where they go. But I do I want to see some more of this, and TCL hasn't officially put anything out. This was actually a report that just came out with some images, but it is, going back to the MWC thing. It's one of those issues where there's a lot of phone companies that had stuff to showcase, and we're slowly going to be seeing these as they start rolling out, and they figure out new ways and timelines to debut them.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to have to.
Yeah, I think we'll start to see more of this even this week. I think
Yep.
companies are like, we'll just put it out there anyways when we had planned on doing it.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it'll be a lot of stuff coming out, but interesting ideas when it comes to different phone form factors. All right, continuing on here with Digital Trends Live, let's go to some other trending things, and let's talk about some phones and a company that wasn't going to be at MWC, but still is very, very big when it comes to smartphones.
Who is that?
Oh, that's Apple. So talking about the iPhones and the big question surrounding, it's not till September that they'll release these, but the big question surrounding whether or not they're going to be 5G enabled. And there's been a lot of talk that Apple would just skip this year and not make a 5G enabled phone, but now there's more reports coming out that, yes, indeed, maybe they are.
Yeah.
So they do have their partnership back on with Qualcomm. They're going to be using Qualcomm's new chip, actually, for that, is what the report is, the Snapdragon X55, the same one the Galaxy S20 is using to enable 5G. But also, there's talk about, they have to come up with an antenna for that, and this is what one of these reports is that Apple may be designing their own internal antenna. Now, a lot of people use Qualcomm's antenna for their phones already and just kind of put that in. Apple, as always, wants to do things on their own, and this is the report that they may be designing their own antenna.
Right, because they're apparently when they got the module that Qualcomm gave, it was a little thicker than they wanted, and I'm sure they were trying to fit it into their design already and keeping it really thin and sleek and all that. So yeah, they're not going to probably put up with that, I would say. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised to see them say, we'll design it ourselves. You just give us the modem and the CPU.
Right. We'll make it work. Yeah. I mean, I think a couple of things to take out from that was, one, I totally forgot about Antenna Gate, which happened a few years ago with the iPhone 4, to where they put it up I guess the way it worked is essentially your hand could screw up the antenna that was internally in it. So Antenna Gate was a thing.
And it just happened to be right where everyone holds their phone.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, no, you should hold it in a different way. That's how everyone holds their phone, right?
What do you mean? Yeah, everybody's doing it this way. Yeah, that's not the case. So Antenna Gate with that, but then also just this idea that maybe Apple is going to put out a 5G iPhone. I think that's kind of the bigger story there too. So we'll have to see if they do conform to that and put one out. It's Apple. And they could go either way. They could also be like, no, you don't need it. You don't need a 5G phone this year.
Yeah. But speaking of Mobile World Congress, I think we would have seen a lot of 5G phones.
Absolutely.
I mean, if they are not, because you have to think about it, if they skip this year, they're waiting all the way until next September to be even putting out a 5G iPhone. So they do tend to be a little behind on this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, they wait for everybody else to make mistakes, and then they'll swoop in there.
Right, like make a thick phone that has a 5G. But I haven't noticed that with other 5G phones that they're thicker than normal. So
no. But who knows what this design is that they were coming up with too?
Right. Maybe they have an even thinner design that they were working on for this year, and then they were trying to squeeze in 5G, and it didn't really work. But I do think they will probably. It seems like all the reporting is that they are trying to make it happen this year. So
I think it would be a good move, but then again, Apple does their own thing, so we'll have to see. But you can read more about that at digitaltrends.com. All right, two final things here before we take a break. But we've got this, and this actually happened on Friday, but I wanted to bring it up. How many of you out there played HQ Trivia? I played HQ Trivia. I mean, I remember it was a huge thing there.
It was really good.
I went through a few months where I was playing it.
Making some big bucks?
No, I did not. I would get far, and then I would panic and then press the button too fast and be like, no, I knew that one. So for those of you that don't remember, and you probably do, but HQ Trivia has only been around since 2017. It launched, it was huge, I remember, over that summer and into 2018. So many people playing it, millions of people playing it, this twice a day, where they'd have these 15-minute game shows. Scott Rogowski, however you say his name, he was the host. And there's a whole bunch of turmoil that happened with HQ Trivia, some of it kind of tragic. Actually, one of the co-founders passed away in December 2018 from an overdose. He was also one of the co-founders of Vine. The same people that created Vine created HQ Trivia. Then the host got fired for some things that he did, I guess an interview that they didn't like, where he promoted something that he liked. So he got fired, and then they just kind of went on and on, but now they've had all these money issues to where it is officially now done, and they had their final broadcast, I guess, on Friday, and the hosts were, I got to go back and watch it, but the hosts were supposedly real drunk and and using profanity and asking people to hire them. Yeah, so they let them on air, and that's I guess what happened with this final one, but kind of just a weird thing to think about, just how huge that went. Just boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
Just like a flash in the pan.
Yeah, right here they had $10 million in ad revenue in 2019.
Yeah, they had The Rock on there, I remember.
Yeah, all these crazy celebrity guests,
Yeah.
huge sponsorships, Nike, Warner Brothers, and then it just shows how quickly things can flip. Like, I think it also just, it's funny how, like, this just feels like, oh, it was so long ago that people were playing this, and I totally forgot it existed. And that's just how these, like, viral things happen. It's like, for a couple months, it's the only thing everybody's talking about, and then a year from now, no one will remember.
I don't remember when I deleted it. Like, I just, like, some time I just stopped playing it.
Yeah.
And then everybody else did. So, yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing, but wanted to let everybody know that. So, HQ Trivia gone. All right, final thing here for this little segment here before we go to a break. We want to talk about what is trending today and just give you an idea and a little bit of an explanation of what it is. So, of course, today is President's Day. Now, that is probably one of the hashtags you're going to see the most online, but why is President's Day today? So, I just want to give a little bit of the history of it and explain why it is you're getting this day off on a random Monday in February. So President's Day is actually called George Washington's birthday day. So that's what it is. It's Washington's birthday is the official federal holiday today. It is not called President's Day. The reason is it was established in 1885 in recognition of President George Washington, and that was on February 22nd. So that was actually where the birthday was supposed to be celebrated, where the holiday was. Well, getting on further onto the years, in the late 60s, Congress proposed a measure called the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, which basically took Washington's birthday, kind of Lincoln's birthday, packaged it all into a Monday so that they could tack it on to a weekend. And that is where that started. And the reason behind that was to, give the workers of the United States more 3-day weekends. And they thought by doing that, it would decrease the time off they would take during a regular week. So really it comes down to they didn't want you taking more time off. So that's why it happened. So the Uniform Monday Holiday Act is what that was part of. And that's why you have George Washington's birthday, February 22nd. You have Lincoln's birthday, February 12th, which isn't even officially part of it, all kind of wrapped into this Monday. But according to the federal government, it is still George Washington's birthday, and that is why we're taking the day off, despite the fact that we all call it President's Day. So there's just a little bit of information about what it is that you're taking off today so that you can know more about that. All right, let's do this. We need to get to a break because we're coming back for some Read 'em and Weep. We're going to take a look at some of the trending comments from around the internet and also maybe address some comments directly to us. So stick around back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Hello, this is Digital Trends Live. Thanks for joining us. And again, we appreciate everybody who joins the show wherever you are. We're broadcasting live on a number of platforms, but it's now time for Read 'em and Weep. This is where we take a look at some of the comments that are trending online, and we address those comments directly to you right now. Luke may cry. That's something that could happen on this. It hasn't happened before that I'm aware of.
Long, deep breaths.
Long, deep breaths. That's very important before you go into this. We don't see these comments beforehand, so we actually read them live with you as we go through the show, Drew, regarding hashtag things I can get away with being on the internet and pretending my life is fantastic. Yeah, isn't that what the internet's for?
I think it basically is, yeah.
That's what Instagram's for.
Yeah.
Look, everything's amazing right now.
I don't know if that's what Twitter's for. Twitter is more for just like the world is ending.
Yeah, complaining.
Yeah.
Complaining about things. Yeah, that's definitely, I can agree with that. Well, Drew, things I can get away with. Now you also showed your hand on that, but I'm assuming your life is actually fantastic. So
based on the internet.
Based on the internet
out there.
Looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. All right, continuing on here as we take a look at some of these trending comments again online on the internet. Angela, hashtag things I can get away with, smiling and ignoring the stupids. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if smiling doesn't necessarily ignore the stupids, but.
Yeah, I don't know.
Luke, do you smile and ignore the stupids? Let me just ask you this directly. Please address Angela's comment, Luke.
Yes.
You do.
Smiling, you can get away with smiling and ignoring the stupids. It is something you can do.
This is something you can do. Do you do this in public?
You can do it on the internet too.
You can do it on the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
You just post a GIF or a smiley face.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Elon Musk. Tesla is ramping up solar roof installation across the USA. Training will be provided, so no prior experience needed. That seems like that's going to go poorly. I wouldn't mind a solar roof, except I live in the Northwest. I don't know if it would do me much good here.
Is he talking about like homeowners, or
I think that's what he's
hiring people?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that is.
Because there was that thing where he was.
It could go either way. It could go either way. He could be trying to talk about hiring for solar roof.
Self-installation.
Self-installation of it. Yeah.
No experience needed.
That's not going to be good for me. I'm not going to be able to do that. But no prior experience. Is he going to do a training video where he's on the roof? Like, so congratulations, you're a new solar roof owner. Here I am, Elon Musk. I'm going to show you how. That I want to see.
His music is playing in the background.
Yeah, it's all. He's doing it at night for some reason. All right, Saver Gaming. Cutting Samsung Galaxy Buds Plus versus the Amazon Echo Buds. Oh, your correction to make. Okay. I'm just reading that live as we're going through here. So that's what that says.
I feel like you got set up for that.
I feel like I was set up a little bit for that. I'm not sure who did that review, but wow, Savory Gaming regarding the.
Oh, your correction.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it looks like there's a little bit of an issue on there too. But
sounds like he has a correction to say.
Yeah, Savory Gaming. Your comments. We read them all though, don't we? All right, pathetic. Cool. That's your name. Okay.
He needs to watch the initial tweet. That's
right. Yeah.
You can make yourself look better. You shouldn't just put out pathetic.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Regarding this tower in Dubai, it's rotating. What's the point? Bro, that's just going to use a lot of energy. Yeah? Well, okay, never mind. Now I understand the name. I mean, you're not wrong. That is going to use a lot of energy, but have you seen what they build in Dubai? I mean, none of it makes any sense.
Yeah, it's just a crazy.
No,
we did this because we can do this.
Look how rich we are. That's what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like putting spinners on your cars. You don't need pathetic. You don't need them. Pathetic. Puzzles in regarding. We tried the brand new Impossible Pork at CES 2020. Yes, at last, the world realized how contagious pork is. Praise Almighty. One day, no pork eaters. Okay. How contagious? I'm not really sure on that part, where the contagious part comes in.
It seemed like they liked pork at first, and then they were like, hopefully nobody will.
What is it contagious with?
Maybe because it's so delicious?
Yeah, maybe. I feel like this goes back to the false information that's being spread online. And, I mean, there's a lot of good things for Impossible Pork. That's not what I'm talking about. It's the contagious factor. I don't really quite understand that. But nonetheless, thank you for those comments, and that's part of Read 'em and Weep. So coming up next, we're actually going to be heading to our New York studio. We're very excited for this. We have the director of one of Frontline's new documentaries. This is the one that's called Amazon Empire, The Rise and Reign of Jeff Bezos. Fascinating stuff. So Jeremy Kaplan's going to be standing by for that interview, and that's coming up after this break. Before we go to that, Luke, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
As always, appreciate
it. Have a good President's Day.
Thank you. You
now
too.
I know more about it.
You do. Actually, that's what you should say. Happy uniformed holiday.
Oh, sorry.
That's the smug way to do that. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. So stick around. Back in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you for joining us. Hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you are on because we like to talk about trending tech headlines and news and interviews, and we're wrapping all that into this next one. Now, you may have noticed recently Jeff Bezos purchased a $165 million home in Los Angeles, but did you know how much of his wealth that was? It was 1/8 of 1% of his wealth. It's the equivalent of buying a $75 home if you made $60,000 a year. So how did Jeff Bezos get to that point? Well, that's part of what we're going to be discussing next with our interview. So there's a new documentary coming out on Frontline called Amazon Empire, The Rise and Reign of Jeff Bezos. And we have the director and correspondent for that, James Jacoby, in our New York studio, standing by with our own Jeremy Kaplan. I'm going to pass it off to you, Jeremy. Really looking forward to hearing what this has to talk about.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, if there's one enigma that we have seen over the years, it is who is this guy that is suddenly responsible for the world's commerce? Amazon, Jeff Bezos, just a crazy enigma. I've been fascinated for years, and we're lucky enough to have the director of the new documentary here. James Jacoby, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I have so many questions racing through my brain, but maybe set the stage a little bit. Can you tell people what the documentary is all about and when it's coming out?
Sure. Tomorrow night on PBS at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, Central, we're at 10. It's a 2-hour film, and really it does, I hope, answer the questions a little bit about who Bezos is, what his vision was, has been, continues to be, and, the fact that he really does reign over commerce in so many ways. But we really do take you on a chronological story from the inception, the idea coming to him when he was working on Wall Street. Yep. In the mid-90s and all the way through to the present day, that Amazon's kind of disrupting everything from, not just e-commerce, but facial recognition and, the Alexa devices, and
yeah.
It's crazy. I mean,
that's what's the most fascinating thing in my eyes here. Yes, he's transforming commerce, and we're going to talk in a short minute about whether that's a monopoly or not in your eyes, but also where this company is going. Yeah. The AI stuff, the drone delivery stuff, Alexa, which is rapidly transforming our homes itself. Everything. Yeah. They really have their fingers in so many different things.
This was always the plan in some ways. I mean, Bezos has always said this Amazon, first and foremost, is a tech company. It's funny how they're having to deal with that public relations-wise these days because they like to differentiate themselves from Facebook and some of the other tech companies.
Also tech companies.
Right, exactly. So,
not necessarily something you want to be connected to.
Right. So, but he's always said it's a technology company. He's always been interested in artificial intelligence. He's always been interested in being at the vanguard of all sorts of new technology. E-commerce was just his way in, and transforming that, commerce online. But he's always been, had the vision of making Amazon a tech company,
which is sort of similar to the story you hear about Elon Musk.
Yeah.
He was never really interested in cars. He wants to get us all to Mars, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, Bezos's number one priority is to go to space. Blue Origin, his company, is competing in some ways with Musk's company and Branson's company. But I mean, in some ways, you'd have to imagine Bezos is going to do it right, considering he's so competent in other arenas. But he really does his long-term vision. He's given $1 billion of his year a year toward it, is to build what he calls the infrastructure for going to space, make it cost-effective to build space colonies where millions of people will live one day.
I have ambitions too, but I can't do anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just astounding.
Yeah, I mean, the film actually starts in the present day in May of 2019, basically, when Bezos is unveiling his lunar lander.
Right.
And I mean, basically, this guy who has these crazy visions, and you'd say, oh my God, this is completely ludicrous. But then when you go back in time and you think about how ludicrous it was to say, I'm going to dominate e-commerce in the mid-90s and I'm going to start an online bookstore and that's going to be the way in, you wouldn't have taken that seriously then, so you have to kind of take him seriously now.
Did you get a sense that that was the plan back then, or was it really just, I'm going to start up a bookstore and see what happens?
Oh, no, he had larger ambitions. I mean, even early employees who went for job interviews, he used to do the job interviews. We spoke to a number of early employees who basically said, listen, Jeff doesn't just want to sell you books. He wants to sell you kayaks, and then he's going to know that you're interested in kayaking, and he's going to try to sell you travel services, and he's going to try to do everything. It's going to be the everything store.
Prescient.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious about how you got access, because, well, let me ask you a different question. Bezos seems to me like the world's biggest enigma, or at least up until this point. Until we heard about the divorce, until the videos came out and the pictures of his wife, I didn't know he was married. I still don't know if he even has kids.
Yeah.
Does he live in Seattle? Probably, who knows?
Yeah.
This man seems like an enigma. Is that just me?
No, it's not just you, and I think he still continues to be an enigma. We tried to peel back as much as we could by talking to people that have known him for a very long time. He's, certainly since the divorce and the scandal and all that, we know a little bit more about him.
Right.
He's also become much more of a public figure. I mean, he just, where does he live? He just bought a $160 million home in Los Angeles, I think the most expensive home in L.A. He lives
1/8 of 1% of his money.
1/8 of 1% of his money. He owns a big duplex here in New York. He's got a lot of houses, various places. He has, I think it's 4 kids, but really it's completely, his personal life is so off limits. It was a big, scandal about, that the National Enquirer exposed him, but then his kind of taking it on and writing a Medium post and hitting back
That was crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, and what was also crazy is we were already in the midst of kind of, we were thinking about making this film, and then that happens, and it's just like, okay, was it motivated by Donald Trump, who's a nemesis of his, because of Bezos' ownership of the Washington Post? Or now it's recently been revealed that Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, doesn't like Bezos and hacked his phone.
It gets crazier the more you dig into it.
Totally.
How much access did you get? Are there interviews with Bezos? You must have spoken to the man.
There are not interviews with Bezos.
That's how private he is, right?
Bezos did not want to participate in the film, but what was terrific was that Amazon gave us access to his top executives.
Okay.
So there's the CEO of Amazon, Jeff Wilke, the CEO of Amazon Web Services, their cloud computing company. That's Andy Jassy, as well as several other major execs there.
That's interesting because
Yeah.
it's about him, not necessarily about his company. I guess you can't. It's hard to separate the two.
It's very hard to separate the two, and the way that we approached this was that since, I don't think we could have filled up a 2-hour biography about Jeff Bezos, in part because he's so private. So it's the man and his company. I mean, they're one and the same, and Amazon, if anything, is kind of like a reflection of his way of thinking, his way of being. And so it's kind of this investigative biography that we look at him through the company.
What did you learn that surprised you the most?
I think there were so many surprises. I mean, when you start to recognize all that Amazon is involved in, and how quickly they're pushing us technologically, right? It's amazing. And I think, to speak about some of the top executives, we got an interview with Dave Limp, who runs their devices team. And what surprised me were their answers to tough questions, because rarely do these guys sit down and answer tough questions. We brought a lot of tough questions to them, and I think it's surprising to see, one, how adept they are at fielding them, but when you give them enough time to answer them, you also kind of recognize what a difficult spot they're in. They're so powerful, and they're changing our lives, and yet at the same time, you don't necessarily know whether they recognize, how much responsibility comes with that power.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like what they're trying to do runs directly into our conceptions as Americans of what our privacy is and what our rights are. And as those two things butt heads, that just must have been fodder for some interesting conversation.
It certainly was. I mean, it certainly, when it comes to Alexa devices, people are putting these devices in their bedrooms, they're putting them in their living rooms. And we spoke to a former one of the founders of Amazon Web Services, which is their cloud computing company. It did $35 billion in revenue last year. It's huge. And this is one of the founders. And I asked him, I'm like, do you ever he has Alexas in like every room. I'm like, do you ever turn them off? He's like, yeah, anytime I want a private moment. And I'm like, okay, why? And he's like, well, I know how Amazon works, and I know that some human being, there's a possibility, will be listening and transcribing that conversation to train their AI better. So he's like, I turn them off when I want to have a private moment, and he teaches his kids to do the same. But this is sort of an unthinking habit that there's 100 million Alexa devices out there. People aren't doing that necessarily.
But the fact that Amazon executives themselves understand that fundamental problem, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
I could talk to you all day, but we can't, unfortunately. I have one last question for you, though. The monopoly one. I brought that up before, and I don't know if you dig into it in the documentary, but what's your take personally? Do you think that they are a monopoly?
You know, so one thing that's interesting that I learned over the course of this, we totally do get into this in the film, is that being a monopoly in and of itself isn't illegal. It's not.
Right.
It's whether you're exercising that power, that market power, in ways that hurt others. And we've thought about monopoly in this country for a long time, for the past 30 years, about whether it hurts consumers, whether a monopolist is going to raise prices. But Amazon's entire brand is based on low prices and infinite selection. So they've kind of evaded scrutiny. And it's given them this opportunity to also treat business partners, their suppliers, and other businesses that rely on them, and in some ways to treat them rather viciously. And there's an open question right now about whether the Federal Trade Commission or the DOJ are really going to start enforcing the law in the ways that they're treating other businesses. So we'll see.
It's almost like the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, because businesses might be being harmed, but consumers are benefiting.
Right.
The specific letter of the law says consumers should be protected.
Well, at least the way that the specific law actually says, no, you go after a monopolist when they're hurting other businesses and consumers.
Oh, okay.
But the way we've seen it in this country, the way it's been enforced for the past 30 years, has always been in service of the consumer.
Got it.
And now we'll see whether the FTC kind of starts to take a different stance, and it'll be interesting.
Tomorrow night, PBS.
Correct.
A lot of interesting stuff is going to come out of this document. You have to see it. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you
so
very much
for
for
having
coming
me.
in.
Yeah, thank you.
We've got lots more technology coming up just around the corner, so please stick with us. Digital Trends.
Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Again, thank you for joining us wherever you are. We appreciate you being a part of the show and getting to have these conversations that we get to have here. And right now, we're going to talk about some new technology, in particular in photography. So let's do that. I'm Greg Nibbler here with Davin Matthews. Hello, Davin.
Hey, good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. You always bring in cool toys or, very expensive equipment, however you want to quantify that. But we have another one here right now with us. So let's walk through what we've got.
Yeah, so this is the new Nikon D780.
Okay.
If you've seen a DSLR before, you've seen one that looks like this. So
Yep.
Looks a lot like the predecessor, which was the D750. But the big deal here is it's been almost 6 years now since the D750 launch. So this is a long time coming. That was one of their most popular DSLRs they ever made. And this is replacing it, so it's big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was wondering how long that had been out, because that's just kind of been a standard for so long that to come up with a replacement, it took them 6 years to come up with some new things to add on.
Yeah, and well, so part of the funny thing is that the D750 stayed competitive that whole time. So among DSLRs anyway, until Canon came out with the 60 Mark II, and even that didn't push much beyond it. So it's been a competitive product until now. The downside is that DSLRs as a product category
are not as competitive as they once were, because
Yeah.
everybody's going mirrorless. And so I think that is the biggest competition to this camera now. It's not other brands, it's actually Nikon's own mirrorless system.
It's that this segment alone is being challenged by something else completely different.
So I think that, this is an excellent camera. It's a great DSLR. If you are a DSLR shooter, particularly a Nikon D750 owner, and you've been waiting for an upgrade, this is the one to buy if you still want a DSLR. But I think you do have to ask yourself that question, and you should really look into the rest of the market to decide if that's actually what you want, because for most of us, it just doesn't make a lot of sense anymore.
Just briefly, what are the big factors that you would use to decide whether you want a mirrorless or whether you want a DSLR?
So the DSLRs have one big benefit, which is battery life. So because you're using an optical viewfinder, that doesn't draw very much power at all. So as long as you're shooting through the optical viewfinder, this camera can get you 2,260 shots on a single battery charge, which is very good. Nikon's done a great job with their power management. It's very impressive in this camera. So that's great. So if you're somebody like a wedding photographer, where you're going to need to shoot for a long time uninterrupted, that's where something like that might still be beneficial to you.
Yeah.
The other thing is that there are some particular situations in which the autofocus is still going to be better on a DSLR. One of those is if you're using an external flash, and those actually they project a red grid that helps the autofocus system out.
Interesting.
I don't know exactly why, but that only works with a DSLR's viewfinder autofocus system. That doesn't work on mirrorless cameras.
Okay.
So again, a lot of people doing that will be wedding photographers shooting in dark reception halls.
Right.
But other event shooters, some photojournalists might still need some of those features. But really, other than that, it's all mirrorless right now. And one of the things that struck me is that this camera by itself is $2,300.
Yeah.
And that's about $400 or so more than what the Z6, which is sort of their mirrorless version of this camera, is selling for. So because the Z6 has been out for over a year, that price has come down.
Yeah.
And if you're weighing this versus that, most people should just get the Z6.
Yeah.
It's cheaper. It has internal stabilization that this camera doesn't have. It has an electronic viewfinder, so you get all the same eye detection, autofocus, and all of that through the viewfinder. And that's an issue with DSLRs is if you're shooting through the viewfinder or shooting live view, framing on the back of the screen, it's a completely different experience. So in live view, you get eye detection, which works exceptionally well on this camera. It even locked onto someone wearing dark sunglasses when I was testing it.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it, actually. It was pretty impressive. I've had regular clear glasses mess up other eye detection in the past, so that this worked so well is great. But when you're using it in live view, you lose the battery life advantage. That goes away. You're basically just shooting a big mirrorless camera at that point. And that's, I think that's why mirrorless cameras just make more sense for more people.
Well, looking at this one in particular, talking about it being the upgrade, over the the D750, excuse me, and 6 years in the making, what are the upgrades that they actually made on this?
So a lot of those upgrades are to do with that live view system.
Okay.
So on the D750, and that was just the way technology was back then.
Right.
The autofocus was very slow if you used live view. Other things, video is much better on this camera now. You've got 4K. You even have some advanced features like a clean HDMI output. It can output a 10-bit video over HDMI, which is a pretty advanced feature.
Yeah.
This is still primarily a still camera. That's what most people are going to buy it for. But if someone does need a good video camera, it can play that role. But again, that's something that's going to be better or at least equally as good on the Z6.
Right. Yeah.
And then there are some smaller improvements as well. You can now shoot a faster shutter speed, so 1/8,000th of a second compared to 1/4,000th on the D750.
Okay.
And you can shoot slower as well, so down to 15 minutes without needing an external timer. So for long exposure photography, astrophotography, that kind of stuff, you want to get the star trails, you can do a 15-minute exposure in camera, and I think the D750 was 30 seconds. So you have a big difference on that end. So it's more versatile overall, yeah.
So that being the change, and then just kind of looking at some of the upgrades here. So going from the D750 to the D780, talking about what those upgrades are. Any other thing that's of note?
So other things, they have updated the autofocus Slightly. It's the same system, but they've given it the algorithm from their flagship D5.
Okay.
And that's good. It does work very well for what it is, but those viewfinder autofocus systems are still pretty limited. They only cover the center part of the frame. They don't go out to the edges like your live view system does. So they didn't do anything entirely new there. And I think that's my biggest critique of this camera is that it's a very good, solid DSLR, but it doesn't do anything to really push that format forward, to really push that DSLR technology forward. And I was hoping that maybe it would do some of that.
Have some groundbreaking change.
But I think Nikon is just gently nudging people into mirrorless.
So you think so? You think even from their strategy?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a stopgap camera. It's saying, hey, look, we understand some of you aren't ready for mirrorless yet, so we're going to give you this. But we're hoping within the next generation you're going to be ready to go mirrorless.
And then you think that's going to be the end of DSLRs?
I don't think it's going to be the end. I don't want to speculate about it, in the next 5 to 6 years what's going to happen. But it does really seem like Nikon's putting more effort into their mirrorless systems right now. And if that's true and if that is their strategy, like I agree with that position. I think that's a good move. But it does mean that if you are someone who's a really diehard DSLR owner and that's all you ever want to use, you might not be seeing some of the developments you were hoping for, at least not as quickly as you would like to see them.
This may be one of the last ones you see for a little while, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly expect this is not going to be replaced for at least as long as the D750 was around, right? So for another half decade. And I just, knowing that, I would have liked to see a little bit more, right? To make a camera last that long again. The fact that it's using the same viewfinder autofocus system and there aren't a lot of other specific new technologies as far as DSLRs go that it brought. Most of the new technologies are mirrorless technologies, live view technologies. But it is a very solid camera. I don't want people to just knock me in the comments. Like, I do like it. It's very impressive. I just don't think it's what most people need today.
Well, I know you're going to be doing a review on it too.
Yeah, so that'll publish Friday, I believe.
Okay, so later this week.
Yeah.
So wait around if you're deciding whether or not to run out and get this. Wait for the review.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a look at that. Take a look at what Devin's tested on it. But definitely interesting, that comparison between DSLR and mirrorless and where that's going. Yeah. But Devin, as always, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to everybody who's joining us here. Again, this is live every single weekday, so we've got a lot more coming up. So we've got another interview on the way. We've got Amber Osborne, who's a VR and AR marketing strategist, to talk about virtual reality and, in particular, meetings. Talking about MWC being canceled. Well, what if they could have done it all in VR? How far away are we from doing that? Well, we're going to discuss that and more coming up. So stick around back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. We do appreciate it. And of course, you can always share the show and let other people know about it as well, because we get to have some great discussions about technology. And certainly something we've been covering is MWC and how it was just canceled due to concerns of the coronavirus. But what does that mean for conventions going forward? How are we going to handle those? Could we do them all in some form of virtual reality or augmented reality? Well, we'll discuss that and some more right now, because we have an AR and VR expert who is joining us here, a marketing strategist. It is Amber Osborne. Amber, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Greg.
I'm excited to talk about this, and I always love finding out about different use cases for VR and AR. But to give everybody just a little bit of context, can we talk a little bit about your background just in this field in general?
Yeah, so I have been in this space for the last couple of years, mostly working in startups that deal with social VR aspects, immersive collaboration environments, all the big words.
Yeah, and I think that field is one of those ones where, you know, when it comes to VR, we know about gaming, we know what the gaming industry is doing, but this interaction, social interaction in a VR world used to seem like something that was, you know, far out in the future, like a Black Mirror kind of show, but really it is something that is happening right now. And like you said, you've been working with these companies. So to give everybody, I guess, just a little bit more idea too, where are we at on that? How are we at on the social VR interactions?
So social VR has actually been around for quite a while, even before, I would say, virtual reality as a whole, with things like Second Life. So there was social environments way back when, but in the last couple of years, we've been seeing a lot of different players pop up in the social VR space. And what social VR is immersive social spaces or environments in virtual reality that you can interact with other people through avatars in real time.
And that's key. I think that real-time interaction, I do remember Second Life. I don't know if it's still around or not, but we'll have to. That's a question for another time. But looking at it from that aspect, you're right. It really has been around for a while. So going from, you know, these social VR interactions to kind of what I brought up there at the beginning, and I know we want to talk about this some, is just these giant conferences and different ways that we engage in meetings, whether it's business or socially or however we want to talk about it. Things like MWC, where you have an entire conference canceled. But are there platforms where this could have been handled via virtual reality?
Yeah, there's actually many different options currently for social VR. So there's Hubs by Mozilla, there's AltSpace, there's Roomy, there's Engage VR, there's Rec Room. There's so many different options out there. So all you have to do is just Google and find all these different worlds. And it really allows, I think, people in more remote locations to attend conferences or to attend sessions that maybe, you know, they can't always travel to main locations or main hubs to get this knowledge.
Right. And I mean, I think that accessibility is just such a great thing that technology can do, of bringing, you know, more interaction to people. I think that's a great example of somebody who can't, we can't all just fly to Barcelona or go, you know, to some of these amazing things, but we all have lives and jobs, and it'd be nice to be able to participate, you know, without that. So from that, I mean, you mentioned that there's, you know, all these platforms that are out there. What are some of the hindrances or things that are impeding people from engaging in these more?
Yeah, so there are quite a bit of challenges that we still face as an industry to recreate some of those more social moments. I would say that you have either in between sessions or happy hours, or, you know, there's really memorable moments that you have. But that doesn't mean that VR doesn't have that. You're still able to network. You're still able to have kind of the in-between moments in VR. But there's still some challenges also with avatars. People want more realistic avatars, and there tends to be something called the uncanny valley that happens. We might have seen it in movies before, where you kind of get that weird kind of zombie look in the eye, and your brain is like, is this real? Is this not real? So there's still a couple of challenges that we have to face as an industry with social VR.
Yeah, that uncanny valley feeling is a little bit, unnerving when you do encounter it. Well, talking about going back to some of the conferences, I know that there are some that might be trying this out as far as having their conferences in VR.
Yeah, so in the last couple of years, I've been seeing more and more events do supplemental virtual experiences. So you can attend some of the sessions in VR, There recently in the last year was a conference that a college, Lethbridge College did called Merging Realities, where it was an all-day conference. I believe it was one of the first, and that was in the Rumi platform. Right now, actually this week, there's a week-long conference going on with 150 different speakers focused on education. So that's called the Education in VR Summit.
Wow, the entire thing is in virtual
The
reality.
entire thing is in virtual reality, and it's doesn't mean you have to be in a headset all day. You can experience some of the sessions in a browser or just on a PC, just even on mobile.
So, and I think that's another way too. Just talking about going back to that accessibility aspect is, for as far as the headsets themselves, because that I feel like is another thing that could be a little bit of a hindrance because not everybody has one.
Yeah, so that's another challenge is that accessibility to headsets. But nowadays, headsets are getting less and less expensive, and the quality of them is getting much better. So, I mean, you've got the Oculus Go, the Oculus Quest, you've got the Vive headsets that are getting more affordable. And we have a whole other line of headsets and technology coming down the line that I think more and more people will have access to. So I don't think that is a main challenge, but it's just getting the headsets into people's hands and having them experience things like social VR and having that wow moment, going, wow, this is really cool.
Right, yeah, I agree. Like, I remember the first time I tried on virtual reality, it was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And then you get into the add-ons with the haptic feedback and different things you can do with that.
Definitely.
Well, I mean, looking at it from that aspect, how far away are we from Ready Player One, where we all live in, in the virtual world?
I don't think, that's one thing that I personally, I think is still going to weird me out a little bit is just seeing people walk around with headsets on. I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon, but there are, you mentioned haptics. Haptics is already happening. It's happening for training purposes. There's a company in Seattle called Haptics that does haptics gloves, and I've tried them out. It's really cool. You can actually touch little sheep animals and things.
Nice. Well, asking you, and I know we're running out of time, but just one final question. What are you most excited about to use? When you use VR, what do you use it for?
So beyond gaming, because I think it's a great workout for some of these games. You really do, build up a sweat with like Beat Saber and some of those games. But what I'm really excited about is, again, just the social aspect. A lot of us work remote, we work from home, lifestyles are changing. I really like the feeling of being able to feel like I've been in a meeting with somebody or been at a conference with somebody, having more of that connection and one-on-one past Twitter or the social networks.
Well, it sounds like it's time for me to fire back up my Second Life account, so I'll have to see if I can find that. But Amber, I want to say thank you so much for joining us too, and for everybody to follow along with everything you're doing. Where should we direct them to?
So everything I'm doing, I'm on Twitter. You can't get rid of me on Twitter. So Twitter at Miss Destructo, and amberosborne.com is my own personal website.
Perfect. Well, Amber, thank you so much for joining us here on Digital Trends Live.
Thank you. This is fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, so again, talking about virtual reality and augmented reality and some of those exciting things and how it's changing stuff, right? We hear about this tech, but what is it actually doing? How's it being applied for? And this idea of more meetings and more social interactions in VR is really fascinating. So thanks everybody for sticking around for that. We've got more coming up though. So we've got some space news to talk about coming up next. We've got an interview here in studio. So stick around back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. And welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you for joining us wherever you're watching. Always appreciate it. So hit that subscribe button, share the show, let everybody know about it. Let's do this. Let's talk about some space news. And it was yet again another big day for SpaceX as they sent up another one of their Falcon rockets, sending more Starlink satellites into orbit around Earth. And this is all part of their goal to encompass the Earth in satellites in order to create a high-speed broadband network that can reach any part of the globe. So they're starting it off right now. This is obviously the 5th launch, like I said, so a big move right there. A couple of firsts on that. It's called the Starlink 5, or, well, they're calling it the 5th launch of Starlink satellites, but they're going to be doing a number of these as they go through. So again, relaunching these and using their rockets as, as the reusability factor being the big part of this, and they actually recovered one of these for the 5th time. They've also set a record for the shortest amount of time in between launches with one particular one, or at least for them. Now, it's not the shortest of all time for any orbital class launch vehicle, but a 63-day turnaround. That's as close as they've come to the 54-day turnaround that were launched with the Space Shuttle Atlantis. But you'd expect they're going to be getting that turnaround a lot quicker. They have a number of these different rockets there. They're going to be actually setting these up to start launching twice a month going through the rest of 2020. Only one in February because of some delays on weather, but March is set for 2, and then going forward, that's the plan. Again, weather can always change these things, so it kind of depends a little bit, but there it is, taking a look at that launch, and it's one of those things where it's still impressive when you see it, but you also get reminded that now it's starting to become routine, and that's really, really cool in a lot of ways. There are some issues that come up, of course, some controversies around Starlink, and that has to do with the number of satellites that are going to be up there and just whether or not that is going to affect things for astronomers. The astronomy community is not very happy about that. In fact, the International Astronomical Union put out a report expressing concern over it, saying the negative impact that the planned mega constellations of communication satellites may have on their observations is a very big concern for them. So that's something that actually SpaceX and Starlink tried to address by saying that they're going to be having some of their satellites with a special coating now that will make them less shiny. So that way they don't reflect as much light. But they're still going to be up there, so that's certainly a concern because the goal is to get to 30,000 satellites. That is in part what their goal is, to encompass the globe. Right now they've got 300. Of course, they're not the only ones doing this. You've got a number of different companies that are working on it, but they are at the forefront right now because they can send their own satellites up. So that's something that SpaceX is doing. Expect more news from them. You can read more about this at digitaltrends.com. All right, continuing on here, we've got some other space news for you, some other firsts, and this seems to be just routine anymore, right? This is always happening, some news associated with that. So let's talk about some of the competitors, kind of, to SpaceX, and that is Virgin Galactic. Virgin Galactic's goal, though, is more toward getting people into space in the commercial side of things. So they want to send you up to space for the low, low price of $250,000 per person. So here's what's going on. Right now, they're getting ready to possibly send up their first space tourism flight in June of 2020. So this is getting very close to what they're doing, but they have a different approach. They're not going to send you up in a rocket. They're going to send you up in a plane that will then launch another plane once you get up high enough. So here's how it works. And part of the news here is because of the fact that they actually got their space plane, which is the VSS Unity, to its commercial headquarters at Spaceport America in New Mexico. So there's an example. So you saw that plane flew off the other plane. So you have this giant, kind of double wide, weird looking aircraft that takes that up to a very high altitude, and then it launches off of that. So it means they don't have to do that kid's face sums it up right there. So that's where they actually launch off from that, and that way it's one of those things where they don't have to go straight up. They don't need as much rocket fuel. So they can get there, climb up, and do what's generally observed as where space begins, which is 62 miles up. The people riding on it, it's in total a 90-minute trip. You only get a couple of minutes of weightlessness, so you don't get a whole lot of that. And then you head back down. You get some great views, though, I'm sure. It doesn't seem quite like $250,000 worth to me, but I'm sure, if Virgin Galactic would like to send me up, I'd be happy to give you my opinion on that. So that's just a little bit of a plea right there. But nonetheless, so this is something that's going to be possibly, again, taking place in June of 2020. So that's another ramp up of this commercial aspect of sending ordinary citizens up to space. Now, Virgin Galactic envisions a future where eventually they're going to have space hotels they would take you up to. So you'd go up and spend a week in space, vacationing there, and then they would take you back down, perhaps other tours or trips. But that's where they're seeing the future going. So it's all from that aspect of they want you to buy a ticket to go on their space plane. So that's another bit of news there. You can check more about that at digitaltrends.com. And the one final thing I want to talk about is this. We'll go back to the exploring side of space, and that has to do with the Mars 2020 rover. And this was making some news over the weekend because it has now made its final journey to where it is going to be launching. So it's been being developed at the Jet Propulsion Laboratories in California, and the Mars 2020 rover has now successfully made the 2,300-mile journey to Florida, where it's going to stay until it's launched up into space later this year. So there it is, just taking a look at it. Again, this is an incredible years and years and years long venture to make this Mars lander. And it's going to be doing a number of different things. So this rover is going to be ideally exploring a geologically diverse landing site. It's going to assess ancient habitability. So did there used to be oceans on Mars? Well, this will try to determine that, and also search for signs of ancient life, or maybe even life now. So a lot of things that it's going to be discovering, but a huge, huge project. And now, of course, all this hinges on a successful launch. The launch window right now is July 17th to August 5th, 2020, depending on weather. That's going from Cape Canaveral. And then the landing is anticipated to be February 18th, 2021. So hopefully that's when it'll happen. But again, years and billions of dollars have gone into this, and has now completed its final journey to its launch site. It's going to be enclosed in this specific way that it's launched, and then ideally, the next time we'll actually be seeing it will be on the surface of Mars when it's sending back images and even sounds. They've got a microphone on this thing too, so pretty cool. A lot to talk about with that, but you can read more at digitaltrends.com. All right, just want to catch you up to date on some of those trending stories when it came to space, but we've got more coming up. So here's what's going to be happening next. And I thank everybody who joins us here on Digital Trends Live, because we get to have conversations, and we're here in our Portland, Oregon studio. Joining us next, we have Ethan Ralston, who is the president and CEO, the U.S. president and CEO of UBCO, to talk about their new really cool EV bike. It falls somewhere between a mountain bike, somewhere between a motocross bike. He's going to give us a better explanation of that, but that's coming up next. Stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you again so much for joining us. Wherever you are, we appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button, share the show, and join in the conversations we get to have. And we get to talk to a lot of really cool people, and that's what we're going to do right now. So I'm Greg Nibbler, joined now by Ethan Ralston, who is the U.S. President and CEO of UBCO. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Really nice to have somebody here in studio with us, and excited to talk about this new bike that you have. But I want to give everybody just some context and background. Can you talk a little bit about what UBCO is?
Yeah, so UBCO stands for Utility Bike Company.
Nice.
We are an electric manufacturer out of New Zealand. which is pretty interesting.
Right,
A lot of
yeah.
times you don't get an electric manufacturer out of New Zealand for vehicles.
Right.
But we focus on manufacturing two-wheel vehicles right now. We started in 2015.
Okay.
Original design concept was for a college project back in '99.
Wow. Back
Yep.
in '99, so
Yep.
way ahead of the time.
Yep, and of course technology really wasn't there yet for what we were doing. So fast forward, company launched in New Zealand in 2015. The US market we launched in 2017. We're in 4 countries right now: New Zealand, Australia, Europe, and the US, and we're here to talk about our new product today.
Yeah, I mean, well, when it comes to electric vehicles, I think we're all starting to realize what a wide range of things that could encompass. Everything from like a Tesla Cybertruck to, anything else that you can think of that just runs on it to an e-bike. And that's what we want to talk about is what this one is, your brand new product that you've got out. So I want to make sure I get the name correct, the FRX1.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it.
Perfect, and that name just sounds already badass. But anyway, so the FRX1, what is this?
So this is a new class of kind of electric mountain bike hybrid into a motocross bike.
Okay.
So we classify it as the free ride bike. That's this new segment. So if you are a mountain bike rider, high-end, or you're a motocross rider, now there's these new class of vehicles where you can put a big old electric mid-drive motor in it, 15,000 watts, 15 kW. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Think about like your basic Tesla. That's a 70 kW motor. This has 15, but it weighs 132 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 132 pounds. So it really is, like you said, you're creating essentially with this a new segment.
Correct.
That hasn't existed before.
Correct.
So talking about it from that standpoint and this segment of, in between motocross, in between mountain biking, where is it that you're going to be taking this? Is it going to be on the trails that you're on mountain bikes on currently, or is it actually taking it to a track?
It'll be tracks, OHV parks, more off-road areas, not necessarily a mountain bike trail because this has too much performance.
Gotcha.
Once you go up to 15,000 watts, I mean, that's equivalent getting to like a 250cc dirt bike.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
That comparison makes total sense to me then. So you've got a lot of power packed into this thing, but at only 132 pounds.
Yeah, so the agility
Dang.
of it, like that's what makes it really cool.
Yeah.
So when you look at people riding two-wheeled motorcycles for the past decades, right? Mm-hmm. You may be intimidated. They're heavy, right?
Yeah.
A normal bike could be 250, 300 pounds. You're shifting. There's a clutch. There's a foot brake. It's really technical.
Yeah.
The beauty of electric, of course, we can bring the weight way down. Now it's all automatic. Your brakes are up top. So a lot of our mission for inspiring people to do cool things out in the U.S. and ride and transform the way you ride off-road, now you can do that because literally anybody can jump on with a minute learning session.
Yeah,
that's the opportunity.
I mean, yeah, laying out a 300-pound bike is a lot different than a 132-pound frame.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
you need to know how to ride. And then if you crash that, that's going to hurt.
Yeah.
So,
So that cuts down a little bit of that side of things. So looking at it right now, like where is it at? I mean, how's production going? And I want to talk about some of the tech aspects that are able to that you're able to get, a 15,000 watt battery into this thing.
Yeah. So production's going to be in July. That's what we're looking at. We originally launched the bike back in November at the AIM Expo. That's the big, large motorcycle dealer expo every year. We originally had pedals on it and a bike seat. So that was the original design. Design came from a company called Pneumatics in Lithuania.
Okay.
We're going through acquiring them right now and
Nice.
the design of the bikes. That gets us into Europe plus into the performance part of the brand. But since then, that's when we've redesigned it where we've gone to more of a moto seat. We've gone to pegs. We've gone to a full inverted forks. 50 mile an hour top speed, which is awesome.
Wow.
Again, 15 kW motor, 62 mile range, takes about 6 hours to charge. This thing's just going to be a blast to ride off-road.
I was going to say a 62-mile range, so that's actually a lot further than I was even thinking with something like this.
Yeah, I mean, the battery technology is getting there, of course. We can stuff a lot of cells into a battery. Mm-hmm. It's a 2.2 kW pack, 50-volt system. So when you do that and you put in these types of vehicles, you can go pretty far on them.
Right, and at that kind of weight, that I would think that makes it just a little bit more utilitarian as far as a lot more people would be able to put this in. You don't need a giant trailer necessarily
Correct.
to haul these around.
No, from a Tesla Cybertruck,
Yeah.
throw 2 of them in the back. Anyone can easily get them up there because they're lightweight. a Rivian R1T or R1S. I've been tracking those quite a bit.
Yeah.
That'll fit right in the back. So if you look at the ability to mount these things, again, it just opens up the class of riders.
Right.
You may have never ridden a motorcycle before, right? That's great. You're our customer. That's our demographic. Like, we want people to get out and explore in different ways, and that's what we can offer with our vehicles.
Well, opening up kind of a new segment like this, where do you envision this segment going? Because, I mean, it sounds like it's a perfect kind of, as you know, the perfect midway point between all of that, and also accessible for a lot of people to start getting into it. So where do you see this segment going in, say, 5 years?
You know, it's still early on in a lot of this, but you just start to see it growing, just like a lot of the early adopters in electric vehicles did. The motorcycle market in the U.S., it's still a little bit behind. You've started to see Harley put a lot of buzz out there.
Yeah.
They've announced their Livewire project, so their full-on street bike. They've announced something in this category too, a lot of concepts and designs. So you can see everyone just starting to gravitate towards it. So, you know, 5, 10 years from now, these will definitely be more mainstream. But it's the same old argument. Battery technology is coming down in price. You can put more cells in.
Yeah.
Volumes will increase, which will drive pricing down in the end as well. And our goal is to be there as one of those major players, which we are right now, selling into 4 countries. And just to continue to bring new products out to market. Portable power is a big thing. So when you look at like vehicles such as this, we have ways to get in with USB and 12 volt. It's just a huge portable power pack on wheels. So think of like a Goal Zero, right? Carry that thing around. They have a 3,000 watt portable power pack. Ours is on wheels, so it can get you from A to Z. You can still do a lot of the same things. So that's a lot of the part of the brand when you look at utility and other aspects of what we can actually do with these vehicles.
And that's all just part of this, you know, technology constantly advancing.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the EV side of things.
Yeah, it's amazing. So
would you see this becoming a competitive vehicle at some point? In the competitive space, you know, we mentioned motocross and that kind of, in mountain biking, sometimes there's the competition side of things. Is this a segment that could be relevant in that?
Yeah, I think what will happen is a new segment on the competitive side will start.
Yeah.
You know, you have your dirt bike classes. Alta went after that, right?
Yep.
They did pretty good, but struggled going head to head. So I kind of see this new class starting, and you're seeing that now. There was the one motorcycle show in Portland last weekend. There was electric flat track racing. Like that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So I see the whole electric market, if the competition side increases, it'll be its own class. That's where I kind of see it. But again, we're more focused on providing vehicles to riders that may, again, have not ridden a motorcycle or off-road before. Now they can get out 60 miles somewhere and just have a blast, be exhausted at the end of the day. And it's just a new way to explore and have an adventure.
I love that, expanding it to more people. That's just really, really cool. Well, and speaking of that, let's talk again, to just to remind everybody of when this is coming out, how they can get their hands on it.
Yep, so July is production. We're launching pre-orders today. So at 10 a.m. we just launched it. So if you go to our site, ubcobikes.com, that's where we have a pre-order button. It's a $100 refundable deposit.
Nice.
First come, first serve. So hopefully we'll be selling out of these things quickly. But that's where you can go to check them out and get your pre-order in.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us here on the show to talk about this too.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and congrats. So you're about, as of right now, depending on when you're watching, about 20 minutes into this.
Yeah.
Where it's officially launched.
It's live. It's there.
It's a big
out.
day. It's an exciting day. So congratulations on that, and thanks so much for being here to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't wait to learn more. So check all of that out at digitaltrends.com as well. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's joining us here today. So tomorrow on Digital Trends Live, we'll be talking about autonomous vehicles and specifically the legalities and public policies that may pose as roadblocks to widespread adoption. We've got Eric Tannenblatt, the Global Chair of Public Policy and Regulations at Dentons, will be on the show to discuss the challenges and opportunities around autonomous vehicles in 2020. And coronavirus is in the headlines. We talk about it a lot, but it wasn't long ago that the Zika virus was on the front page. Mosquito-carried diseases are on the rise, and Benjamin Resnick of BusyGo will discuss how they're using AI and computer vision to track and eradicate mosquitoes using drones. So this is going to be fascinating, and I need one because mosquitoes are really addicted to me, and I get covered in bites in summer, and that was gross. I probably sent too much information. All right, tune in at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern to catch both of those interviews on whatever platform you consume content with. So for Digital Trends Live, I'm Greg Dibler, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.